It's common to believe that bias is a topic that doesn't affect you, that you are objective and free from any sort of stereotypical thinking or discriminatory acts. It is simply not possible to be bias-free, and a belief in your own objectivity relegates systemic injustice to the position of being a minority issue, rather than an institution-wide issue in need of concerted, widespread resolution. Addressing the challenge of implicit bias. So what are the do's and don'ts for anybody serious about building a better understanding of implicit bias? First and foremost, don't be in denial. We have clearly shown that even the most forward-thinking, educated, and liberal-minded of cultures can and does suffer from the blight of implicit bias. Do take conscious steps to act bias-free. A simple one is to standardize all questions in the hiring and admissions process so that all candidates are evaluated on the same merits. Don't unfairly burden. Don't unfairly burden women or minority faculty or staff with the task of serving on special committees. It may create a false sense among other members that the issue of diversity has been addressed and places the entire onus for advocating for diversity on the feet of those women or minority members. Do be deliberate. Be deliberate in your desire to increase awareness of the potential presence of implicit bias, both personally and professionally. That means being willing to openly discuss it in a professional, organizational context. And just as importantly, to personally understand, recognize, and accept that you too are subject to the influence of bias and assumptions. I've heard people making derogatory remarks about white males as if we are all privileged. I'm from a rural community and the first in my family to go to college. We aren't all the same. Don't engage in unstructured employment interviews or unstructured interviews with students or patients. Don't engage in unstructured interviews for employment or admission where personal preferences and biases can come into play. Instead, develop a standardized set of questions and, where possible, conduct blind interviews, where test scores, socioeconomic information, and background information is hidden. Don't engage in unstructured interviews with patients either. Unconscious stereotyping on the part of healthcare professionals can determine what types of questions are asked of patients, which can affect the level and type of care. Do imagine counter stereotypes. When considering someone who is likely to fall under a particular racial, ethnic, age, physical, or gender stereotype, call to mind individuals who break the common stereotype of that group. Do score for fit. Control for issues of likability and fit by giving this criteria a numerical score and weight. It puts the issue on the table instead of allowing it to subconsciously influence decision-making. Do use blind applications. Blind resume and applicant reviews are a great way to level the playing field. Removing names, race, gender descriptors are a simple way to minimize race, gender, and cultural bias. Don't pursue a colorblind approach. Don't pursue a colorblind approach to interactions and evaluations. It's not possible to be truly colorblind. Instead, it gives us the illusion that we're objective without objectivity actually being possible. The attempt to be colorblind is counterproductive and actually increases bias. Do embrace color boldness. Instead, pursue a multicultural approach that embraces difference and heterogeneity. Be color bold. Accept that race and ethnicity are important parts of a person's identity. Do create a culture of dialogue and understanding that embraces individual differences and recognizes commonalities. There's no single Hispanic culture, just as there is no single white or female experience. Strive to build an environment where each voice is heard. Cultivate a meaningful, accountable process for dealing with bias, and ensure everyone is familiar with the procedure for reporting grievances and complaints. Don't assume you know someone's gender identity or orientation. We tend to impose our own ideas of how members of certain groups should behave as members of that group. This plays out in ways that men and women are described differently by their supervisors and colleagues. Men tend to be described as assertive or as leaders, while women are described as hard workers or team players, characteristics that are valued less in promotion and retention decisions. Do be gender neutral. Use gender neutral adjectives to advertise open positions and admissions. Adjectives like competitive and determined tend to deter women applicants, whereas collaborative and cooperative attract more women than men. Software programs can help you identify gender-neutral language, as can a careful proofreader. Part of gender neutrality is using the preferred pronoun for each individual, even if it doesn't conform to the gender they appear to be on the face. Do be transparent. Be transparent in your criteria for hiring, compensation, and promotion, so that faculty and staff understand the expectations and can endeavor to meet them. Failure to do so can lead to confusion and a tendency to rely on subjective or personal criteria in decision-making. Many women have been recruited to this institution on lower startup packages than their male counterparts. When approached, administrators blame the female applicant for not negotiating harder. Building a culture free from biases begins with intent, a commitment on the part of all of us to cultivate a mentality of respect and humility, a willingness to listen and to accept, acknowledge and to respond to stories different from our own, a pathway we are all free to embark upon, one that leads to self-awareness, a path we will all be richer for following. Thank you.